Okay, thanks. Popcorn.
That's never nice.
Amy's sustaining me with salted caramel popcorn pieces. Look at those. Delicious. It'll get me through the next hour of collegial and constructive debate.
I like popcorn.
I don't.
I'm wondering why Amy hasn't
No, it's okay. I'm off. I'm on the way now.
given me some popcorn. Or is it just one of the advantages of the mayoral office?
You
Location.
have to be here, Ewan. You
Location.
have to be here. And
Can
sadly,
I?
you're not.
Though can I? Can I? You won't let me play in the office.
I'm up in my lonely office. Don't worry about it. I could wave at you across Garden Place, however.
Sounds good.
I was waving at you guys last night from my studio, actually. I was looking right down on the Ukraine thing. It was quite lovely.
Where's
Oh,
your
really?
studio?
Oh, actually, if you look out your office window, Paula, you see the tower building.
Yeah.
It's directly right on the corner, same level as your office.
Oh,
Yeah. I was trying
Did
to
you
get your
wave out?
attention because I thought if you're in your office, you could flash your lights at each other.
is that the radio station?
Yeah.
Oh, I've been up there once or twice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's on the other corner, though. It's the one facing your office.
Hey, Paula, it's Jeff here.
Yeah.
I'll just have my camera off for about 20 minutes because I'm going to be driving.
Okay.
Cheers.
Okay.
Boy, Lance, have I got a treat for you?
Right, help me onto the right item here. We're on
11.
11. Thank
Page-
you. On that.
Page 198.
Got it. I'm going to buy this, Amy. It's so delicious. I'm just going to get my hands on some. Okay. Oh, let's go. So, Lance, you're going to make some introductory comments before Julie leads us through this process. And we'll try and get through the machinery parts as quickly as possible so that we can leave the debate for the matters that really we need to debate. How's that, Lance?
Quick
Thanks,
question
Nick,
there, Paula.
Home?
Sorry, just a quick question. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, yeah.
When do we do the CE review?
Ah, I move, and I want a seconder, that we defer the CE review till at least the end of the business tomorrow.
Second
And
that.
yeah, and if we run out of time, we'll move it to the next available agenda. Compared to annual plan, it's no disrespect, Lance, it's not urgent.
No, I'm comfortable with that. I think we've got more pressing things to get through.
Mhm. Is that all right, Ryan?
Oh, yep.
Okay. Okay, Lance, lead us into the annual plan, if you would, please.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. I just want to start off with a thank you just to councillors for your participation in the workshops that we've had, and also putting in your proposals. And Paula, you used the word collaborative before, so I just wanted to thank people for their proposals and the feedback that we've had so far. So that's appreciated by staff. Just looking at the report, what we did with the report was put in all the information into the report rather than appendices. We thought that would be a bit easier to follow, even though it makes the report look reasonably long. It's probably no longer than previous annual plan reports, so just a bit of housekeeping there. What we've tried to do is, in drafting the annual plan budget and the report that you can consider and work through starting this afternoon, and obviously we're going to be into tomorrow, is making sure that we continue to bring effect to the intend to be our 5 priorities and also the 10-year plan that we've had significant discussion on over the past couple of years. Also being cognizant of the reality of what we can achieve and deliver in these challenging times. And we've had a good discussion on that in the workshops. the report also allows you to consider the councillor requests and also the staff requests. There's sections in there which Sean and Julie will take you through. And importantly, we're also mindful of where the community's at the moment in relation to course there and situation that they're facing. So what we've tried to do is take a pragmatic and tactical approach to the annual plan based on year 2 of the 10-year plan, and but really taking also into account things that were brought up during the workshops was the ever-changing environment and circumstances that we're all faced with at the moment, obviously around COVID. Councillor Ewan talked about, you know, the conflict in the Ukraine, and really acknowledging the volatile economic conditions that are, you know, top of mind for people at the moment, and especially around inflation and cost increases. So we've put forward recommendations for consideration for you to take into account, and bearing in mind the useful feedback that we had from the workshop sessions, and also probably the pragmatic approach that I talked about. I just wanted to say that you've got options open to you, and we believe throughout the report there's opportunities to discuss those options and, you know, respond to that changing environment, and also the challenges and opportunities that the annual plan budget actually provides. But we know there's going to be different views from elected members on those things. We think there, as I said, there'll be those sections in the report where you will have the opportunity to discuss the approach that's been put forward by staff, and also if you have different views on that too. So I didn't want to steal Sean and Julie's thunder. I'm going to hand over to them now just to talk about the way we're proposing to actually work through the report, and then hopefully we'll be able to move into the first section of that. So I'm going to hand over to Sean and Julie.
Thanks.
Yes, as just to kind of pick up where sort of Lance left off. So yeah, so starting point is year 2 of the long-term plan, and so through the report we've sort of put the financial strategy graphs in at a few points where we think it kind of makes sense to sort of take stock and consolidate. But as always, we have got the team available to do modelling kind of as we go. But there will be some logical points where it kind of makes sense in the report itself. So we start sort of on page 204, 205 of the agenda. That's the starting point, which is the second year of the long-term plan. And then we're going to go through the various changes to that, proposed changes to year 2 of the long-term plan. And that's really what the decision's here for. So there's essentially kind of 5 categories of those. One is around changes to reflect council resolutions since the LTP was adopted. So through all the committees, etc. So that's the recommendations in B1, and that's sort of summarised in table 2. And then the second set of changes is around mostly resulting from contract changes. So these are sort of known changes to contracts, etc. So they're the recommendations in B2, and in the body of the report it's table 3. Then we've got changes to assumptions, and they're the recommendations in C, and that's in page 209. Then we move into changes to the timing of the capital program. So that's the recommendations in D and E, and that's in page 210 to 213 of the report. And then those are the things where we sort of, after that point in the report, we sort of take stock and say, well, here's what the financial position looks like for taking all those things into account. And then we've got the, I guess, what I would call the final sort of section of changes, which are the proposals to be considered. So that's the recommendations in F and G. And so that's when, so we've got elected member proposals and staff proposals, and sort of that's where I think or assume that the bulk of the conversation for this meeting is, in terms of, I guess, the more discretionary end of those changes, the changes to the to year 2 of the LTP, are those proposals. And so then we've got another sort of set of financial strategy graphs after that, which assumes that all of those proposals are included. And So that's on, and then we kind of get into, then there's just noting there's some other proposals which were discussed at a workshop with councillors which haven't been included, but they're included there. So elected members have the option to put those up if they choose.
Sorry, process. That'll just, but when we get to those, we'll be able to ask questions on those. We may not want to do anything about them, but we'll get some clarification once we. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just sort of clarify that in terms of the way the on those proposals or any of the motions are framed, as we sort of work through the meeting, as we've done in previous annual plans and LTPs, we talk about for the purposes of doing the modelling, and then at the end, sort of for the purposes of preparing the budget. So what happens after this meeting is that we reflect the decisions that have been made today into the budget that comes back in May, and so that's when you make your sort of final decisions. So I just want to kind of clarify that you aren't getting backed into a corner based on kind of the sequence of decisions that you're making, that we don't have to resolve to unpick previous decisions. You don't have to revoke decisions, etc. as we go.
Sean, I've got an admin question. Sorry to interrupt you. Mayor Paula, I'm just concerned that might not be looking at the right document, because you keep referring to a number of pages that I'm on item 6 in PX. Is that correct?
No, we're back in the open agenda now. Item 11, okay. The annual plan. Okay,
so we've gone back simply so we can turn around and come back.
So I believe the intention is to work through the open, so the sections of the annual plan report, dealing with those sort of first sections, and then move into PX for those PX sections once we've kind of got through those first sort of set of recommendations.
That was my intention.
Your Worship, that's not what I had been told yesterday by staff and your Chief of Staff. When I raised that, I said it makes no sense to do the public items until we've resolved the PX. And so he confirmed that. And so I'm now very confused.
Do you want to comment on that in terms of process? Because we know what you want to discuss, and there is a place for it in the open here, isn't there?
Sorry, Ewan. I'm trying to recall the conversation and the sequence. We did talk about sequencing and where the discussion was on some of those assumptions around inflation.
Yes, I guess I'm just repeating.
We might have been talking at cross purposes, so apologies for that.
Okay, so this is what I got from Chief of Staff yesterday after I raised this point with Mayor Paula, and subsequent to that I spoke to Councillor Rob on the basis of what I just got, and it says, but basically we'll get to item 11, we'll start the item in open, and then during the item switch to PX, sort out the inflationary stuff, and then return to item 11 in open.
Oh, correct. That's what we're doing. So we're going through a number of the sections, and then we go into PX. It's probably after
paragraph 38.
Two of the sections. Julie, you might want to help me here. Two or three of the sections.
Yes,
then we go into PX.
So Lance, Lance, isn't the point that we won't be making any decisions till we've had that conversation about inflation?
Correct. Yeah. So as we work through this, as Sean said, we go through it, and any resolutions are for the purpose of modelling, and then if you want it, the binding resolutions are right at the end of the whole discussion. So,
okay, Mayor Paula, can I just note my disappointment, and can I please note that I think we're doing this wrong? And can I please note that I reached out yesterday and I expressed that, and yet again, despite the reassurance from the Chief Executive and what Sean's just said, principally, I think this is the wrong way to do it. and I'd be really interested to hear from Rob because we'd had that conversation.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. Let's hear whether other people share that common concern. I missed what went on yesterday, I must say, but I have to say that as long as no decisions are binding or made before we've had that conversation, I'm more relaxed, perhaps. But Rob, give us your view.
Yeah, look, my understanding is as Ewan has explained, but I think that's exactly what we appear to be doing at the moment. The way I see is that Sean and Julie have presented up to, or what is in the open report, and that having spoken to that, we're not now going to start asking, as I see it, we're not now going to start asking questions on specific matters that are in those pages that Sean has just referred to, but having, if you like, introduced the pages up to, I guess, paragraph 39, which is where it sort of sits. We then go into PX, and we discuss a number of other matters that are not in here or are not fully explained in here. And we may make a decision there as to what we might bring back to the open if it's appropriate to do so. Is that how you saw it, Ewan? I mean, you sort of suggested to me how you thought it was going to pan out today. Up until now, I think that's how I see it, but I see very quickly now we will be moving into PX to discuss the PX part, and then we'll come back to go through each of the items in the recommendation.
Look, my fundamental point is I didn't want to start debating items that are in or out until we had resolved the issues within PX.
Yeah, that's fine, and that's what I think.
But if you're telling me that in fact we're making no decisions of what projects are in or out, we're not having any of that discussion, then I'm relaxed. But if we are, then I'm not. So could you just confirm?
Can I get some clarity from staff that that's the approach? Julie, could you?
Councillor Ewan and Councillor Pascoe, maybe I can just try and clarify a little bit. The first section that we really wanted to talk about was the resolutions under B, and these are where Council's already given direction around some changes that you wanted included. So those are the first section under B1, and then under B2, there are some changes that are coming out of things like contract changes that we really wanted Council to be aware of before you move into that PX section. The other thing that we thought would be really good for you to be aware of before we move to PX is the position around the deferrals. And so all of those resolutions are for Council to consider them in terms of the budget. As soon as we've covered those bases, that'll give us sort of a new base position for you to see where we are. At that point, the proposal under paragraph 38 is to move to PX and have the full conversation in PX, and then that gets resolved before we start discussing any of the proposals that have been put forward. Does that help clarify?
Yeah, but what you're basically saying is we are prioritising above every other thing that we may need to balance out the things that we've previously agreed, and I think it's an unfair prioritisation. But look, I've expressed my point of view. I think it's wrong, and I think it's, again, I feel like I'm being railroaded. But you know, look, Mayor Paula's in charge. I just have to go with what she instructs. But I think inherently the process is flawed.
I'm going with staff advice about how to run the agenda, which outside of anything newly raised, I was unaware. I was happy so long as no binding decisions were made prior to the discussion on inflation, which is in PX. So I wasn't aware there was any further issue. Staff, can you give us a suggested way forward if this isn't going to... How do other elected members feel? do you want to deal with it? It seems to me dealing with inflation would be just one element amongst these, but that's, you know, so what we could do is have the discussion on, like you say, on 2B and 2B Roman numerals 1 and 2, and then pause before we make any decision and go into a inflation public excluded.
Yes, Mayor Paula, considering where we are on the day, and I know we want to pause at 5:30, it might be useful just to discuss those two items first, and then without making a decision, and then come back in the morning when we're all fresh, and we can have a really give the time due to the discussion around the PX, because that would be the first topics for tomorrow morning.
Yeah, okay. As councillors, can you just give me a thumbs up if you feel that that is a constructive way forward, please? Yeah, okay, so it's about half of us. All right, well, so are any of you feeling equally aggrieved with Ewan on this, or see a different way of doing things? No. Okay, let's do that. No decisions are binding. It's the discussion, it's the financial context, if you like, and then we will finish for the day, because I think people are getting a little bit, I think we just, you know, need to think fresh, and we'll come back. And so also for the sake of the media that have been waiting and watching, we will begin the meeting with the PX item. We will have that discussion, and then we will open up to public and go through the rest of the business. That's how I am determining to go forward now. Rob, question.
I just have a very quick question to ask, and that's around, if I look at paragraph 39, is that the full effect of all of the proposals under the recommendations, that if we go to page, it's on page 229 and 230, where it sets out that if we accept all of the proposals in the form that they are in this open paper, we will end up with an $11 million deficit in balancing our books, as compared with a $2 million deficit that we budgeted for in the long-term plan, and that our debt at the end of 2023 will be 799 million instead of the 876 million.
Yes, Councillor Pascoe. That is what we wanted to give elected members some context, and so that is basically our worst case scenario. If everything goes in, that's what it looks like, including a possible resolution out of PX. We know.
Sorry, could PX make it worse?
No, that includes. It could, depending on what your decision is. Yeah,
well, it could, which is Ewan's point, that we might have this discussion.
Yes. Yeah.
However, we need a way forward, so let's go through.
So sorry, paragraph 39, the modelling effects shown in paragraph 39 are in fact our worst case scenario in terms of accepting everything that's in here and PX and not adding anything more into it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Let's direct us to the page to start the conversation, please, staff.
Okay. So if we start on page 205, this is the first set of recommendations that have come through things that council has already discussed and decided. And because we're an agile environment, your discussion today in PX has resulted in our first resolution there, B1A, to now be not required. So the discussion you've made today in PX removes that resolution. So Amy has provided us with a new set of resolutions for B1. So we now just have the Beale Cottage resolution, climate change and sustainability resource, the city waters sludge contract, and the sub-regional free waters project. Just remembering the sub-waters The sub-regional free waters project isn't related to water reform. It is related to a decision that you made in 2019 to support a regional project, and we've been carrying that money forward for the last 3 years. Happy to take questions on any of those matters.
Okay.
Julie, I also just need to flag that there is an error in, well, and we realise that the climate change and sustainability resource, it indicates that that's been a resolution of the committee on the 30th of November. It wasn't actually formally resolved by the committee, so it was discussed and it was in the report, but it wasn't actually hasn't actually been previously resolved by council. So it doesn't change the budget or the recommendations in this report. I'm just flagging that that wasn't actually resolved previously.
Okay, thank you. Let's take questions on that suite of issues. Rob.
Yeah, thanks. And I have a question on that one, so I'll do that first. So presumably it's not a decision of council, and it is possible that it could be removed in this round of discussion.
Yes, so at the moment the recommendation includes it. So if and so it requires a motion to approve all of these things, which are sort of reflective of the decisions that have been made. I'm just saying that one wasn't actually decisions that would be made, but the recommended motion in here does pick that up anyway.
So that 290,000 a year, is that an additional amount to a similar amount that was included in the long-term plan?
It's additional to the long-term plan.
For a resource.
It's additional to the long-term plan. There is 100,000 of it is actually to correct an error in that there was a budget transfer from professional services to employees, and it got taken out of one place and not put back into the other. So that's rectifying that. And then there's 190, which is actual staff resource.
But that is a second resource to the resource that wasn't approved in the long-term plan.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And my other question is about the public excluded resolution. And do you wish to discuss that when we go into PX, or is it okay to discuss it now?
Councillor Pascoe, that resolution is now gone and removed because the discussion you've had today in PX on this matter replaces that resolution that you made on the 10th of June.
But
So
there's still likely to be some ongoing costs.
not for 22-23.
Okay. So we're not considering what changes might impact in later years of the LTP.
Yes, we are. They will be brought back to you in the public excluded.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Those are my questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. So you talked about 190 being a resource. You're talking a human resource. You're talking, how many staff are we talking there, Sean? This is
2.
That's 2. Okay. That was my sole and stunning question. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions around the matter? Oh, yes, Martin. No, you're mute, sorry.
Sorry, as Chair of the Environment Committee, apologies for this particular process. Can you outline the negative outcome for council and our strategy if the 190K was removed?
So there are, because of the work that we have undertaken this year with the climate strategy and the climate policy, so that resource reflects sort of a ramping up of resource required to both deliver those pieces of work, but actually then more importantly to carry out the work that comes off the back of those things. So the impact would be that we essentially don't or can't deliver at the same pace those pieces of work, or the delivery outcomes from those pieces of work. That's essentially what the impact would be.
And basically it was an administrative oversight.
In part.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, I think Martin's basically asked my question. Thanks.
Sorry, can I just ask one more question?
Sure.
My apologies. Sarah, have you finished? Sorry.
Yes, I mean, I think it would be good to have a little bit more detail from Sean just around kind of, in terms of the resourcing, what it will achieve in terms of delivering the strategy and policy and things. But that was all.
Sure. So at the moment we've got a staff member on parental leave, and we've got staff backfilling that role. We had anticipated that when she comes back from parental leave, that's when our resource requirement kind of ramps up, and so we'd like to keep on the staff that we have at the moment, and the policy work is we've sort of discussed through various briefing or workshops and committee meetings, but the purpose of the policy is really around how we make decisions on climate impact of various other matters. There's quite a bit of work involved in helping or facilitating the rest of the organisation to make those types of assessments and decisions, and so if that policy is adopted, that will there will be quite a bit of work that comes off the back of that. With the climate strategy, obviously that's sort of setting our long-term direction, but we know and understand that it's the action that comes off as a result of that strategy, which is what people are really clamouring for. And again, there's a ramping up of activity across the organisation, but it also requires quite a bit of coordination and to kind of pull that together and to make sure that the things we are doing as an organisation are the right things. So that's what those resources are effectively there to do.
Okay, that answers that question, Sarah. Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry. So it must be late in the day because my maths isn't quite doing right for me. The 190 is for 2 extra staff, which I fully support. But the 100 on top of that is to fix an error, but it's got it as ongoing. Is that, you're saying it's $100 grand a year ongoing, or is that just for a one-off? So the grand total is 290.
Yes.
You mentioned 190 was for resource,
yep,
and 100 was to correct an error.
Yep.
Is that ongoing, 100 a year?
Yeah. So what happened is through in the LTP, there was a budget allocation of, I think, $250,000 for the broad program of work for environment and climate to support the Environment Committee, etc. That was.
Sorry, Sean, I've just clicked. I've just got it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll save you breath. Thank you.
Okay.
I understand now.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Sean, so accepting or putting aside the $100,000 mistake, and I'm not quite sure how we've managed to make that mistake, we're left with 190. Why wasn't that included in the original long-term plan?
We hadn't anticipated the level of resource required, I think, to at that point. And as we've done the work on the strategy and the policy, I think it's become clearer that has been required. And so we have signalled that through the last sort of few environment committees that this was likely to come through the annual plan, and it was an omission on error on our part that that hadn't been. I thought that had been resolved through the committee and subsequent council meeting, but in fact it hadn't. So that's why that's why I'm sort of raising it again now.
And in light of the financial pressures we know from budget blowouts in the previous 9 months of this current financial year, and as we go into the new financial year, why do you believe that this 190,000 needs to be prioritised above all other projects and demands that this council is currently facing?
I'm not saying it needs to be prioritised above all those other things. I'm saying I think it needs to be prioritised along with all of the other changes that are in the proposed annual plan, and it's for to complete the work, or for the reasons that I sort of suggested earlier to Councillor Sarah's question.
And Sean, if we chose to delay this for a year so we can get a better understanding of our current financial position and how the market and in fact the economy in general recovers, what would happen?
So we'd have to look at how we'd probably have to move some budget between our professional services and our personnel lines to juggle those, basically. So we'd probably have to make some sacrifices in the professional services in order to offset those increased costs in personnel.
Okay, I have no other questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ewan. Councillor Pascoe?
Yeah, my question follows on from that on the same topic. Are there any existing resources that could be reallocated from within the organisation to save the additional, well, we've got 190, but even to save the other 100,000, given that there was a substantial increase allocated in the payroll in personnel costs when the long-term plan was approved 9 months ago?
I think the short answer is no, but the slightly longer answer is that they're already kind of baked into the budget substantial cost savings, as well as sort of when we get to talking about wage, staff wage inflation, they're already I guess dollars that we are sucking up in the annual plan. So no, I don't think there are.
Thank you.
Sean, just checking, you're asking questions about 1B, B, what numerals 1, or are we doing numerals 2, Roman numerals 2 as well?
We're just on B1 at the moment.
Thank you, that's what I thought. Got a question for the rest. Thanks, Maxine.
Look, I guess it's a little bit wider than maybe just this issue, but are we aware, often there's the opportunity to apply for funding or co-funding or look for partners around there. Might there be an opportunity through other policies of government to be able to make application for funding that might be able to give effect to our actions and commitment to community?
I might get Julie might sort of make a comment on this, but as a general note, I would say that what my understanding is that those types of funds tend to be for I guess more on the ground activities, be it actual kind of for example planting of trees, etc., and less so for the types of resource that we're talking about here. I'm not sure if Julie's got anything further to add to that.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, thanks, Sean, is that we are actively looking for opportunities to use other funds where we can. A really good example of that is that we've been looking at a tool to help calculate emissions, and we originally started this discussion with the regional council, so we were going to do a co-partnership with them. But since then, central government has indicated they will be funding this out of their climate emissions budget, and so regional council and us have agreed that we will wait until the central government provides that tool and that funding, so we don't spend something that we don't necessarily need to. So that's the sort of stuff that the team, particularly the staff that we have, are working very closely with the regional council, with the Waikato Wellbeing Project in the Climate Accord space, and also with others like Go Eco to try and make sure we have the most efficient outcomes we can.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the other thing would be that if perhaps we cut this out of our budget, would it be undermining the commitment we made to make climate action an emergency issue?
it would make it harder.
Kia ora. Thank you.
So,
Thanks.
so if it would make it harder, that leads to undermining, doesn't it? I mean, harder,
Sure.
harder,
Yes.
implies harder means we're less serious about this major issue of our time.
That's a leading question, but however, I guess the point you're making is with no budget, you can't do much.
Well, I mean, frankly, we have we literally, if a person goes down sacked, things have stopped. Simple as that. This is smell of oily rag stuff, folks.
All right, well, we'll leave that bit for debate, but thank you for that. Any further questions on those top ones? If not, we'll move to Roman numerals 2, if you would step us through those, Sean, and then we will call it a day.
Right. Maybe me, Paula, if I lead that initially. So we are on now page 207 of your agenda. These are the things that we discussed at the workshop that have come through from changes to contracts or things that we don't have a lot of discretion around accepting or not. So there are some large costs in there. You'll see electricity costs across council are going up around about 1.3 million a year, and so we've had to build that in. And we've also invested another $1 million a year in our security for our information services, which is very important, alongside some other smaller items through there. We have also grouped into this list here the impact of the Wakakotahi National Land Transport Program changes that were revised to Council on the 7th of December through the Infrastructure Ops Committee, that we need to bake the impact of those in. And then lastly, there is the impact of the Peacock Bridge contract, which is relation to the terms that we have with that existing contract. And Andrew, of course, is available to answer any questions on that when we get there. The overall impact for that is an impact on our operating revenue. And the impact on our operating revenue is 134,000, and our capital revenue is 1.231 million. We had grouped those two together, but we should split them out. And so that has quite an impact on council as well. So a 2.6 million additional operating costs per year.
Okay, questions, Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. So Lance, the power bill going up 1.5 million. What percentage of our power is that? Because I mean, that's a pretty stunningly big number, but I just want to get some relativity around how much that is.
Fantastic question. I'm looking for the right GM to be able to provide that information.
I can probably answer that. It's about 24%.
24%. And is that typical of, there still seems quite a big jump.
It is. It's a really huge jump, Councillor Mark. So we have Martin, who obviously does a lot of our electricity and looks into all of those. So it's a combination of increased volume, if you like, so use of electricity, as well as prices that are coming down the line straight to us that we will need to pay for. So when Martin tries to forecast all of those things out, that's what it turns out to be. Surprisingly enough, there actually is some gas. We are saving some a little bit of money in the gas space to offset some of those electricity costs.
Okay, cool, thank you. And so just so I've got this right on the Peacock's Bridge contract, that is quite, that 18.1 million there, is that the total cost, not the increase? Is that right? Who am I asking that to? Probably Julie with your mute on.
I can take that one.
Thanks, Andrew.
Bunting.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the gross cost.
Right.
So there's an NZTA subsidy that would sit around that as well, so that the net is circa half of the 18 million.
Gross cost, not gross increase though. Gross cost.
So there would have to be a an $18 million budget increase and an sorry, I'll start again. it's an $18 million increase in the contract, but we get Wakakotahi subsidy on the 18 million. So the actual cost, the net cost to council is half of the $18 million.
About 9 million. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. That's all I got for the moment. Thank you.
Thanks,
It's in that
Mark.
table, Mark, on the next page.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks. Chair, question just around the zoo piece, consequential OPEX of 200K. Is that offset? I mean, it looks like that's a timing, something we've brought forward, but is there a consequential increase in revenue that will offset that because we're bringing it forward as well?
Helen, can you help with that?
I can probably help with that one, Lance. It's Rebecca here.
Thanks.
So that was money that was the consequential OPEX for stage 2 at the zoo, so the roading work, and it was missed at the time that change to the budget was made. So no revenue offset at this time.
What is it for, Rebecca? I think Councillor Hamilton just wants to know what it's actually for.
Yeah,
so he can
so
get his head around.
it's a consequential OPEX on the roading, stage 2 road, so the roading improvements we've done outside the zoo. So it will be for maintenance of the road and car parks.
Okay, and there's no NZTA subsidy with that? It wouldn't be with the car park, of course, but.
Chris here. So no, we're not. That project doesn't attract the NZTA subsidy. I was unaware that that's related to roading, so I'd be taking that offline just to double check that.
Okay, sorry, I was just reading a note from staff. Sorry, Councillor McPherson.
Thanks, Paula. Look, just following Mark's question on Wakakotahi, trying to get my head around this. To me, it looks like an 11 million loss over the next 5 years when you add all the minuses and pluses up. But what it doesn't do is show at this point, and it may have back at the other infrastructure meeting, I'm not sure, I don't recall, what type of projects took hits and what didn't. Was it all active transport? Was it all PT infrastructure? Was it all roading? So I wouldn't mind some information on that. I'm not after that today, because it doesn't, I mean, what they fund quite a wide range of things sometimes. So that's one question. The other one relates to the electricity costs. It's a question through Lance to whoever. The increase in projected costs for electricity, would that change the business case for generating our own electricity through either that generation plant out at Horatu, across the river from Horatu, or putting in solar PV cells on the roof of the council building or other council facilities? I mean, does that make that a more attractive proposition? Has anyone done even a back of an envelope exercise? Because if we're seeing significant electricity cost increases, then is there more ways than just paying more to offset that over the life of the LTP?
Yeah, good question. We might have to get Martin, just get that information, Dave, see if we can get that overnight for tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be handy if you could. Just just after a ballpark, you know, where's the tipping point that starts maybe?
Yeah.
Invest in that area.
No, good thinking.
And Lance, Chris here, in response to the first question, I think the NZTA funding should shift just reflect the decisions made by council in their previous meeting. But I'll get that together overnight as well for councillors tomorrow, just to confirm how it was derived. But I think it's just purely reflecting detailed council decisions you made. So I'll put something together overnight.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Ewan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. In regards to the electricity cost, you've answered a lot of the questions. Thank you for that. Could you tell me exactly which areas of council and its activities are driving this 24% increase?
You're talking about the electricity costs, Ewan? Sorry?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Councillor Ewan, that's a question that we'll need to get Martin, most probably, unless Evelisa wanted to say something, we'd get Martin to be able to provide that information.
Surely we have it.
Yes, but I don't have it at the moment. So we will get Martin to provide that for us.
Right. Okay. Okay. All right. I'll look forward to that. And could staff give me an understanding? I mean, for the last year, we've been in and out of COVID lockdowns, and the number of physical staff working from council's buildings have reduced considerably. I'm assuming we've seen some reduction in power consumption in those aspects.
I can answer on behalf of some of our facilities. So our libraries, we've managed to keep open for most of that time, other than through the lockdown closures. We have quite high power bills at our pools. Unfortunately, we still need to keep, unless we know how long we're shutting down for, it's quite a process to shut down our plant and systems at our pool facilities. There's quite a lot involved with that. So mostly we've had to keep our pools operating at a certain temperature. So our electricity bills have continued, we've retained quite a high level of electricity through that time. There's been some decrease in that, but not significantly.
Yeah, and we'll try and hunt down overnight from the facilities team, just if there's any analysis on that.
Okay, thank you. My last question is in regards to the $9.2 million price escalation for the Peacock's Bridge contract. So I understand that, in fact, it's 18 million, but we receive half of that funding back from WT.
From Wakakotahi.
Yeah,
it's Andrew
okay.
here.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. I recall when we first approved the budget for the bridge, I know I and a number of others asked a lot of questions about our pricing and how we'd mitigated any risk of price escalation. Can you explain again? We didn't have a guaranteed construction price, right? So this is purely, as you say, high cost increases as a result of external market pressures.
So it's not a fixed price contract. It's a measure and value contract, which is normal for these contracts. In fact, normal for many of Hamilton City's contracts. What's unusual about this contract, which is quite separate to pretty much all of the capital program, is this contract is a large value, extremely large value compared to most of the capital program, but it's multi-year. And because it's multi-year, best practice in the industry with the construction accord, expectations from contractors, and even Hamilton City's own internal policy advice is that for those very large value, very multi-year contract, long multi-year contracts, that you'd provide directly in the contract for price escalation. So on this particular contract, there are 6 indices from Statistics New Zealand. So the escalation is real. There's a real cost there. And then what we've used is the most recent quarterly figure, and then try to apply a forecast to completion. So there's still risk in the numbers. It's only a forecast to completion, but the escalation to December last year is a real figure based on these unique indices. that are used in this contract.
Yes. All right. Thank you. I'm gonna have a lot to say about this in the debate. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pascoe.
Yes, question on electricity costs. I assume that we recover the electricity costs from our stadia and our sports fields and so forth that are lit up. Is that part of the increase of 134,000 that we're expecting, or is that 134,000 relate to the decrease in natural gas?
So, Councillor, it's Chris here. Look, I'll undertake overnight to try and get some answers to the electricity. It's a cross-organisational thing, but Martin works for the facilities group, so I'll try and get a understanding. Look, my understanding that revenue relates to an assumed NZTA subsidy for electricity costs on street lighting. Okay, so that's where that revenue is coming from. So I don't think it's revenue from any other source. That's an assumption in itself that might be hard to realise. But look, I've made some notes here of all of the questions that the councillors have got, including the question, I think, from Councillor Ewan about the reductions in some of our buildings through the COVID environment. So I'll try and get Martin online, but have some answers to the collection of questions on the electricity.
And the other part of that is also, or the other part of the query is also our various community buildings that we lease out to various groups. Do we pay the electricity on those, or is that part of their cost as the lessee?
Correct.
Yeah.
And floodlights, Rob, are paid for by the clubs that installed the floodlights at the moment.
Yep.
And Maria's team is just working through when we do the joint project with the Trust Waikato and other philanthropics that are coming in with that, how we work that out. So generally, if organisations have a lease on our land and they have a building, then they pay all their own costs, utility costs. If there's groups that are hiring our facilities, that's covered as part of the hireage fee.
Yeah. Okay. And just then the remaining question is around the stadia as to who will be paying tonight for the lights for the cricket and so forth. Which must be a huge cost. Second question is around the councillor remuneration. Can we agree to forego that increase? Not a popular question.
Unfortunately, the Remuneration Authority is the one that sets it. We don't have a choice on what it is, and we must spend what is in the pool. The flexibility is just not there.
So we have to spend it, and we have to rate our ratepayers for it. Okay, sounds rather strange. Last question, Wakakotahi. I just see that first line at the bottom of page 207 sets out the revenue. Is that revenue, or is it capital revenue, or should it be capital revenue?
Councillor Pascoe, you're correct, it is capital revenue.
Okay, can we get that corrected? So what's the difference between capital revenue from Wakakotahi and CapEx?
Tracy, do you want to answer that one?
Sorry. Sorry, can you just ask that question again, Councillor Rob? What is the difference?
Tracy,
between...
what's the Wakakotahi funding changes?
Yep.
What's the difference between capital revenue, or what is capital revenue? I think I know what CapEx is. CapEx is, for new roads and so forth. Yes. And I also understand there's a one called revenue, which is their share of the costs that they pay us to fix our roads, and that minor safety grant that we get and so forth.
Yes.
So what is capital revenue?
Yeah, so what happens with local government is all of the revenue that we get for basically paying for CapEx goes through the profit and loss statement, which is slightly unusual if you're in a corporate space. So Wakakotahi does give us two types of grants or subsidies, if you like. So one of them is off the capital program. So this is the one you're seeing today, which is specifically capital revenue. So that's for any capital projects that we do. So just like Andrew pointed out before, like with his one, we have capital expenditure. We obviously can claim half of that back through them. We also have that from an operational perspective as well. So that's for things like our maintenance on our footpaths and things like that. We get a subsidy from Wakakotahi. That is part of our operational revenue. And when I report them, they're two different things. So this, we've just accidentally missed a word on the title of this. This should specifically be capital revenue, and we have changed the recommendation to reflect that.
So our revenue subsidies that we get from them are unaffected by these changes.
So my understanding was when we set the LTP, we had put in projects that we thought we were going to get the subsidy on, and the understanding that Wakakotahi was still obviously doing their budgets and what they were going to spend. In your 7th of December meeting, the team brought back to you some of those changes because we obviously didn't get the budget that we thought we were going to do. And this is the consequences of that, and flying all of that back through our projects and our profit and loss and modelling and things like that.
Okay, thank you. And last question, we get the pluses in 26-27 of 12 million and nearly 28 million. Are they guaranteed in the same way that the reductions that they've taken away from us in the early years are guaranteed not to be received?
Chris, that's one for you.
No, they won't be guaranteed, because I think this will relate to some of our programs like Eastern Pathways and some of the university links where they said the funding was not probable, it was possible. So they only look 3 years ahead, they don't look 4 years ahead, and they've indicated, we've got a little bit more business work and development to do. So the opportunity is certainly not lost, but it's like anything in the 10-year plan with assumed NZTA funding. It's an opportunity that we need to pursue.
So for that reason, we keep it in there, but it's not, and that 27 million will go into 26-27 year LTP, but there's no guarantee that we're going to get it.
Look, and this will just reflect the decisions that council's already made as part of the Wakakotahi paper. So that'll be part of what I just confirmed to you overnight. But that's no different than any Wakakotahi project, subsidy project we have in our program. It's an expectation of a subsidy, and it's never realised until you get to the start line and ask for the money.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Dave?
And I would add the projects that we're talking about are very well aligned with the emerging government policy, and I think the indications are, with the LTP and the funding, the way it's going, these are the types of projects that are going to have a higher, the most chance of success, I think, in their new funding transport policy.
Great, thank you.
Dave?
No,
Old hand?
Old hand.
Okay, we're going to kind of wrap it up. I've got just a quick couple of questions. Just step me through the Waipakariki operational costs and how that got changed. That was A, I think.
I think that's already been asked me, Paula, and Rebecca replied.
Oh, sorry. Well, I missed it.
It was the roading, I think.
Chris.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, got you. In terms of, so these are here, and these are things, just want to get processed right, because tomorrow we're going to start when public excluded with the inflation. See, we're all tired. These are things that have either been decided by resolution of council already, isn't that right, or are critical? We've decided on a majority of these already, have we, to put them forward to the annual plan? Is that
the first section?
Paula,
sorry, Julie. You go, Julie.
Let's correct me, Paula. Items under on page 205 under the table, items B, D and E are already have come form as resolutions from council. So if you don't adopt those, would need to go back. And item C we talked about being the climate change and sustainability resource. The things we've just been talking about under B2 are things where as they are potential contract changes like the electricity, we know that we're going to incur that cost and we're wanting to make sure we incorporate those numbers correctly into our base budget.
Okay, so just trying to, I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just, so the first lot, to undo them, we'd have to go back on previous decisions. There's a process around that, right?
Most of the recommendations were for them to be considered in the annual plan budget.
All right, so they're considered, but we can still make the changes to any of those. Yes. And in the, that's helpful. And in the second lot, 8 or whatever it is, those are there because you wanted to put the practical financial implications of some things that are facing in contracts and escalation. Is that right?
That's correct. And things like Peacock Bridge contract, that doesn't impact us next year. It is a 23-24 position. And because it's not operational, it actually doesn't impact our balancing the books, but it does impact our debt to revenue and our debt levels. So we think it's very important that those numbers are included in the modelling.
Okay. So just before we finish for the day, and I want to thank councillors for such a long day and such really good debate throughout the day. Is there any other point that staff would like to emphasise for us to consider or reflect upon overnight before we come back? At what time are we coming back tomorrow? And then we'll get into the public excluded part. So 9:30. I'm concerned about the amount of time we put in there. Wonder if anybody feels strongly that we couldn't start at 9 o'clock. Oh, we can't start earlier, can we, Amy? Well, we are.
We can.
We can.
We are able to start earlier because we're setting the time for tomorrow's meeting, but I don't know how
it was
other leaders feel.
It was just a thought. It would get, well, we're working from home, so you can come straight after your breakfast. I was just wondering if starting at 9 would give us an extra half hour up your sleeve. Yes. Okay, there's some thumbs up there. Sorry.
Sorry, Paula, childcare implications, please. Kesh and Sarah, just clear
Sarah,
with that. Mornings.
With 9 o'clock? It's all right.
Mayor Paula, I have a care of grandchildren at the moment and maybe a little late to that meeting after the school drop-off.
Okay, we'll do our best to start at 9 o'clock if we could. I just feel that otherwise it was going to go the other end of Friday.
No one will miss key votes.
Paula, can I just
okay.
Paula, can I just raise a question? No, it's
you. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Yeah, hello. You and I've got a meeting scheduled at 1:30 tomorrow. Should we perhaps be putting that one off? That's the city safety thing.
We've got externals on that, so I'm not sure we can at this point in time. Remember, we'll have a think about that, but I'm not sure that would be possible at such late notice with the people that we have involved. If you get my meaning.
Yeah, good as would. Okay.
We can have a lunch. We can have a working lunch, maybe, Mark, or something. Okay. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much, staff. Lance, any final reflections, thoughts for councillors, or Sean?
No, just one thing on process, and Julia, correct me if I'm wrong. You said we're going to go straight into public excluded tomorrow morning. There are a couple of other things just after what we've been discussing now, just on change to the depreciation forecast assumption and population forecasts, and also deferral of capital projects. We think it's prudent that you have a look at those first, ask questions like you've done this afternoon, and then move into the public excluded. And then we can have that discussion around the inflation and some of those sensitive matters that are in there. So, and then come out of public excluded and continue. So there'll be a little bit of time just before we go into public excluded. But looking at it, if you have a look at that overnight, there'll probably be a few questions, but I wouldn't see that being a long discussion. There might be some on the capital deferrals and that sort of thing. The rest looks reasonably straightforward, he says. Hopefully. But apart from that, you're done, and well done.
Good job,
Thank you.
Paul.
I keep
Good job.
Thanks, guys.
sorry, I keep seizing. See you tomorrow, 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
See you at 7, Jeff.
See you all.
Yeah, yeah.
Night
Yeah,
all.
mate. Good night.